I know the first thing you expect from a candidate is for them to come up and tell you about themselves. And I will do some of that, but first maybe I'll give you a chance to tell yourself a little bit about yourselves. And what I'd like you to do is picture in your mind, visualize, think about it, feel it, something that someone else does where you think there ought to be a law, or you're happy there is a law, to prevent them from doing what they're doing. Something that does not involve violence or taking any of your money or property. If you can think of something like that, hold on to that thought. And then, I'd like each of you to think about something else. And it's going to be different for everybody. Something else maybe that you like to do, that you feel definitely is a right, that you don't want intervened on. It may be something that is currently a safe right, but maybe you're afraid one day someone might want to take that right away from you. Or it might be something that's illegal that you think should be changed, that you should have this choice that's being denied you. And now, I'm going to put these two things together. Ask yourself whether you would be willing to trade that law that's prohibiting something that disgusts you but doesn't involve any violence or taking any money, take that law off the books or prevent it from going on the books in exchange for protecting and securing your right to do that other thing that you're afraid is going to be taken away. That right that you believe the government has no business touching. And if you can do that, if you feel that you want that trade, you're willing to make that exchange, then you're already with me. And I'm telling you a little bit about myself. Just I got a little bit of a speech here of sorts. And back in the day, people would say, I may not agree with what you say, but I defend your right to say it. And the idea would be that, as long as you share in common that belief that people have a right to express their opinion, regardless of how ridiculous it may be, that at least then you're safe in expressing your right, that this is a common ground rule that is shared among you. Well, except in cases where obviously, you got to protect yourself from violence and people trying to rip you off. But otherwise, I would like to propose that we also have a society where we can turn to one another and say, I may not like what you do, but I'll defend your right to do it. And when a person does something that does violate your liberty, well then that's what we institute governments for. The government doesn't have any business doing all this other stuff. The other stuff we can do on our own. But we no longer have a government that protects our rights. Most politicians have been speaking to your inner tyrant and trying to get you to neglect the liberties of your neighbor in exchange for protecting the liberties you value. The problem is that your neighbor has been playing the same game. If you hear a voice in your head saying there ought to be a law, stop and ask yourself if that law would respect the rights of others to live for their own sakes. You create wealth with your mind and your labor, and whatever you get by voluntary, honest exchange is an extension of your life. If that law takes your property, it violates your past. If it denies your peaceful choices, it violates your present. And if it causes your death, it violates your future. Current laws pillage our past, present, and future. And I'd like to change that. I'm Scotty Boman, and you can learn more about me at bowman12.org. Now, of course, as a candidate, there are some practical things. I got these petitions going around. Would some of my supporters stand up kind of, so they can show? They will have petitions available for you throughout the evening if you'd be, and so if you see one, you're wondering what is that, so we don't have to, talk while other people are talking and so on maybe. Well, they're my nominating petitions, and I'd welcome signatures on them. I'd like to actually close with just something, because a lot of people, think, well, okay, a lot of you know maybe I've run for things before, and I haven't always run as a Republican. Actually, I've only run as a Republican for precinct delegate. But to show my ideas aren't really that alien to the Republican Party. I'm going to read a quote by a very popular Republican president, former late president, but he wrote it before, he actually said this before he was president, back in 1964, endorsing Barry Goldwater. He said, "I'm going to talk of controversial things. I make no apology for this. It's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms intended for us by the Founding Fathers." James Madison once said, "We base all our experiments on the capacity of mankind for self-government." This idea that government is beholden to the people, that it has no other source of power, is still the newest, most unique idea in all long history of man's relation to man. This issue of this election, whether we believe in our capacity of self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess the little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can for ourselves. You and I are told that we must choose between left and right, but I suggest there is no such thing as left or right. There is only up or down. Up to man's age-old dream of maximum individual liberty, consistent with order, or down to the ant-heap of totalitarianism. Regardless of their sincerity, their humanitarian motives, those who would sacrifice freedom for security have embarked on this downward path. Plutarch warned, "The real destroyer of our liberties of the people is he who spreads among them bounties, donations, and benefits." That was Ronald Reagan, just maybe about a year after he became a Republican and he had been a Democratic governor.